Jason, what happened the other night?
I went to the pub for a couple of pints.
How many did you have?
2, 3, 8.
Then what happened?
Well, the plan was pub for a couple of pints, then grab a pizza, take it back to my house and watch the football.
Okay, but what actually happened?
I stood on a table and shouted, "Party at mine."
Right.
Yeah. About 50 people turned up. My apartment got trashed. And I've not seen my goldfish since.
Well, Jason, this is what happens when you don't control your guests. And something similar happens in Microsoft 365 if you don't control guest access. It's a little bit like standing on a table and shouting, "Party at mine."
Gotcha. Can you show me how to control guests? Not my apartment, I mean in Microsoft 365.
Absolutely. Let's take a look. You see, the thing is about a good party, it's only fun if you know who's actually there. You know how it is. You've invited a few friends, but suddenly there's people you don't recognise, and they've brought their friends, and someone's asleep on the sofa. Who invited them? And that's exactly what happens inside of Microsoft 365. Every time someone shares a file in SharePoint or Teams, sends a link to a partner, or invites an external user into a meeting, a guest account is created inside of your tenant. And I suppose that's okay, because collaboration is what Microsoft 365 is built for. But here's the problem. Those guest accounts rarely leave when the party's over. Maybe that supplier finished their project 6 months ago. Maybe that contractor, he's long gone. Maybe that partner company doesn't even exist anymore. Yet their accounts and sometimes their access are still there, quietly sipping your data from the corner. And the thing is, most organizations don't even realize how many guest accounts they've got. I've seen tenants with more guests than staff. And because guest users, well, sometimes they use personal accounts like Gmail or Hotmail. They might not even have MFA. They might be on unmanaged devices, and they definitely don't fall under your company's security policies. So what starts for your business as harmless collaboration can turn into a security risk or a compliance nightmare. And if your business doesn't have the right controls in place, it ends up like Jason's party. Anyone can just walk in. No one knows who's still around. And your goldfish, it's gone to the cloud. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to take control of your guest accounts. Are you ready? Let's get stuck in. The first step is absolutely critical. You've got to require all of your guest users to have MFA. Some guest users, as I've said previously, are using personal accounts. They're probably not on managed devices, and they don't have your corporate protections. MFA, as you know, is your first line of defense. Let me show you how to create a conditional access policy that means every guest has to have MFA. Okay, so I've logged into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, okay? And you want to go down to Admin Centers and Identity. And once you're in there, conditional access, and look at your policies in your tenancy. Now, if you watch my videos on a weekly basis, we've recently done a couple of videos all about conditional access. Hence, there are lots of policies here, okay? So for this specific tenancy, I've got one here called all users. So this policy is applying to all users accessing any app in Microsoft 365 will require strong MFA. So if I was a guest in this tenancy, I would be picked up by this policy and I would be forced to have MFA. But I will show you how to do it, okay, for completeness. And you might want to create a policy targeted at guests, okay? So I will give it a name, something like that. Conditional access guests, all apps require MFA. Now, when it comes to tagging this at users, there's a few things you can do, okay? You can select users and groups, and you can just blanket all the guests, okay? That would do what you need it to do. Or what you can do, I talked about in a previous conditional access video, you can create a group called conditional access guests, and you can add your guests into there, Okay, so there are two ways you can do it. What I am going to do, though, is just do it this way in this video. I would exclude my break glass account. Again, harping back to the previous video on conditional access, I would do that. Target resources. We would target all resources. Access controls. Yes, grant access, but require multi-factor authentication, okay? This is the lightest form. So we're saying to people, you need MFA. There's another option here, require MFA strength. So you can make sure that everyone in your tenancy is using a certain strength. Again, going back to the previous video again on conditional access, we talked about these things here. So you might want everybody to use modern MFA, and you might not want weak MFA methods like SMS. But for just this video, I will click on there. I will click select. That is it. You will put that policy to there and you would create it. Okay, I will just put it to report only. I would refresh this page. Okay, you can see I've got my policy there. So even if you had no other policies in your tenant, which would be a bit silly, but if you didn't and you had this, it would mean that the guests would require MFA. So what should we talk about next? So now all our guests have MFA, which is great. But there's another problem, and we need to solve it. Guest users shouldn't be allowed to wander into the management areas of your Microsoft 365 tenant. Think about it for a minute. You've invited someone to collaborate in Teams. Maybe you've shared a few documents in SharePoint. Everything's going pretty well. But somehow they've found their way into the Azure portal or the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. They simply shouldn't be there. It's a bit like Jason's mate who came round for pizza and he's ended up DJing in Jason's bedroom. So next up, we're going to build another conditional access policy. This one is going to block guests from accessing any of your admin areas. Things like Entra, Azure, Intune, and the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. They'll still be able to use all of the collaboration apps, Teams, SharePoint, Outlook. But if they try and open the Azure portal, they'll get a nice message saying, no, let me show you. Okay, back in conditional access. Let's create a new policy. First of all, let's give it a name. Okay, conditional access guests, access to admin areas, and we're going to block access. Let's stick with the same plan as last time, where we choose our guests from here. But as I said, you can always choose your personas as well. Let's exclude my break glass account. Okay. Now, what areas are we targeting this at? Instead, we're going to choose select resources. The top one here, look, Microsoft admin portals. So this includes your 365 Admin Center. It includes security compliance, Intune, Exchange, SharePoint, lots of different admin areas. It doesn't include the Azure portal though. So to do that, let's search for Azure Resource Manager. Okay. So these two here gives us complete blocking of the admin areas. And we're going to block access. Okay, so it's a simple block. Guests trying to access admin areas, no way. Okay, click on, and that policy has been created. Give it a quick refresh. There she is. What next? The next problem is, who's inviting these guest users? Did you know that by default, anyone in your Microsoft 365 tenant can share a file or create a Teams invite, and boom, a new guest is born. That's a little bit like Jason giving out his address to everyone he met in the pub, which he did anyway. If you don't control who can invite people in, you'll end up with dozens of guests you've never even heard of. And some might have access to your data years later. But we're going to fix all that by creating a clear guest bouncer list. Only certain people can invite guests. Let me show you. Okay, so we're back in Entra ID. Let's go down to external identities. I'm going to go to external collaboration settings. From here, we're going to look at this here, guest invite settings. Okay, the first one here. This is the default setting, and it's probably in place in your tenant if you've not changed it. Anyone in the organization can invite guest users, including guests themselves. So your guests can invite guests. As I said, this is a default setting, and it's basically an open house. Okay, Yes, it's convenient for users, but it also means you are losing control very quickly about who is being let in. Okay. The second option, member users and users assigned to a specific admin role can invite guest users. Okay. This one's a bit better. It keeps guests from inviting other guests, but regular employees in your company can still add people from the outside. So you've got slightly more control, but it's not quite complete. Okay. Next one here. Only users assigned to specific admin roles can invite guest users. So now we are tightening the rules. Okay. This means that only people in admin roles like your global admin or your user admin can invite guests. It's a lot more controlled, but you might end up creating some kind of bottlenecks if your team collaborates a lot. So you need a process with this to let guests in somehow, okay? Some kind of ticketing system where people log tickets to allow guests or something like that. Now we've got this option. No one in the organization can invite guest users, including admins. So obviously this is full lockdown mode. Nobody, not even admins, can invite guests. So you don't use this in maybe highly restricted environments, okay? Or maybe you want to clean up your guests and you don't want any more guests getting invited. So you might put this on temporarily. So it's one of these two, isn't it? Okay. It's certainly not this one, and in most environments, it's not that one. So we've got to look at that, and you've got to see which one it is. And I think member users and users on specific admin roles can do the job for you. Okay. Click on save, and we've now changed our external collaboration settings. Great stuff. Now let's talk about who you actually want in your tenant, because not everyone who knocks should be let in. Now, most businesses that I know usually collaborate with the same handful of partners, some suppliers, maybe accountants, maybe even a marketing agency or two. But when you look at the guest list in Microsoft 365, you'll find hundreds of guests, Gmail accounts, Outlook, Yahoo, even Hotmail. And that's a problem because those personal domains give you zero visibility or control. You might not know who owns that account, what device they're using, or whether they've got MFA turned on. So this is where we need to draw a line between trusted partners and everyone else. Think of it like Jason's next party. This time, it might be saying, yes, you can come in, but only if you're on the guest list. Let me show you. Okay. Entra ID. Let's go down again to external identities. We've looked at this area before, external collaboration settings. This time, we're going to look at this one here, collaboration restrictions. We have a few options. This is the default. So allow invitations to be sent to any domain. Again, that's quite a wide open thing, isn't it? So you can change this, okay? Most organizations will choose allow only specific domains, okay? So you can choose on there, and then you can add the domains in there. So you can add the domains of your partners and your customers and people you work with. That really ties it down nicely. And guess what? You work with a new customer, new partner, and part of the process of that is to come in here and add their domain in here, okay? Process goes a long way for IT security. So anyone outside of these domains just simply can't be invited as a guest. Or you can flip it around. You can do it like this, okay? Deny invitations to the specified domains. So if you're working with lots of different clients and you don't fancy this option here, you could flip it on its head, okay? And you could go and you could block only the most, maybe the risky, the personal domain, shall I say? Maybe things like Yahoo or Gmail or Outlook. So any kind of personal domains, you could just block all those. In my view, that is still better than the free-for-all default here. So again, a really important area. You decide on your security appetite which one suits your business the best. Okay, so even if you've locked down who can invite guests and what they can access, there is still a couple of risks left. One of those is how long they can stay signed in, because guests usually sign in from personal or unmanaged devices, laptops, home PCs, even shared computers. And if we don't control their session length, those logins, they can hang around for days. That's where sign-in frequency and persistent browser sessions come in. They sound similar, but they do completely different things. Sign-in frequency controls how often users have to re-authenticate. So if we set it to 4 hours, that means every 4 hours, they'll be prompted to sign in again, even if they've kept the browser open. It's great for guests because it stops long-lived sessions. If someone walks away from a shared laptop, their token expires quickly and they'll have to sign in again. Persistent browser session, on the other hand, controls whether the browser remembers you after you've closed it down. If we set it to never persistent, it means once the guest closes the browser or shuts down their computer, the session is gone. Let me show you. Okay, we are back in Entra. We are back in conditional access. Again, I keep harping back to this other video I did on conditional access, but I did create a policy here. Look, browser sessions, sign-in frequency, and I targeted it at all users. Now, this is in report only, but I'm going to show you how to set up one for guests, because hypothetically, you should really have a different policy for guests versus your staff, okay? Because they both need different things. So I will give this a name. Guests, browser sessions, sign-in frequency. We will target, again, we will look at guest users. We will select all these here. I will also exclude my break-glass account. There we go. Select that. We're going to target this at all resources, okay? Rather than go to grant here, we're going to now go to session. We've got a couple of things. So sign-in frequency. We've got to choose a periodic one here. So you might choose 4 hours for guests, okay? It's up to you. But that's the setting. And persistent browser session, we want to be never persistent, okay? So that's targeting guests. I'll just keep this in report only, but that is the policy. Click on create, and that strengthens our security for guests. Now, even with all these great policies that we've created so far, guest accounts have a habit of overstaying the welcome. You know how it is. You finish a project, everyone moves on, and 6 months later, their account is still sitting there, quietly, still active. So what we're going to do now is build a process that checks who's still around, automatically, with something called access reviews. Let me show you. Okay, we're still in Entra, we're still in conditional access. But this time, we need to be in ID governance, and we need to be in something called access reviews. So, let's do a new access review. What are we going to review? Teams and groups. We're going to review all Microsoft 365 groups with guest users. The scope, guest users. Okay. Next, on reviews. Who are the reviewers? Okay. We've got a few options. Group owners, selected users or groups, manage the users. So we can choose different things. So you can assign it to maybe some admins or maybe a department or something like that. I would choose group owners for now. How long will this review last? You can change this to maybe 5 days. We want this to happen probably quarterly, okay? With a start date and an end date. Click on next. Now this is where it can get quite clever. If reviewers don't respond, remove access. Okay? So what will happen is this will be an automatic guest cleanup. This is quite harsh, so you can maybe change it if you want, but actually, when it comes to guests, I think it's pretty good. Okay? We can enable reviewer helpers like that, which is good. Click on here, and we can give this a name. I will call this something like Quarterly Guest Access Review. Give it a refresh. Bang. We've got an automated guest cleanup. How clever. Finally, we're now going to control what guests can actually do once they're inside. Because yes, collaboration is great. But that doesn't mean guests should be allowed to download everything or sync files to personal devices. We want to give them a safe web-based experience without putting your data at risk. Let me show you a few SharePoint settings that you should change. Okay, now we're going to delve into the SharePoint Admin Center. So it's 365 Admin Center, Admin Centers, and go down to SharePoint. And this will launch this Admin Center here. Now, there's a few settings in here that you want to change. Firstly, we can go to Policies. We can go to Sharing. Again, this is the default. So content can be shared with anyone. Don't require a sign-in. Anyone. It's not great. So what you need to do for both SharePoint and OneDrive, it's one of these two in the middle, really. This is quite, you can't really get guests involved in everything with here. But maybe existing guests you might choose. So you might have a process of how guests get into the business, and existing guests can only see sharing links, okay? Or you might say new and existing guests, okay? If you want it to be a bit more allowed, you might go like that, okay? One of these two, but make sure you change it. Secondly, we've got a couple of options here. So guest access to a site or OneDrive will automatically expire. Okay, I quite like that. Guest access doesn't usually go on forever, so maybe put 30 days in there or something like that. And finally, we've covered this before, access control. Unmanaged devices. This is a really useful setting. I've changed this in a previous video, but the default is this. So if you've got an unmanaged device, allow full access from desktop apps, mobile apps, and the web. Guest users have an unmanaged device. We don't want to give them full access to all those. So you can block it, but that's blocking it. So what you might want to do is this one here, happy medium, allow limited web-only access. So you get things like not being able to download things and sync things to their local machine. So those SharePoint settings that I've just shown you are very important. So there you go, guest accounts. They're not the villains of Microsoft 365. They're your partners, your suppliers, your contractors, people you want to collaborate with. The problem isn't the guests. It's when we hand out invitations without limits and forget who's still hanging around after that project's over. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Look forward to seeing you again soon.